Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Blue, and I'm a police officer in Miami with 10 years of experience. We're currently doing a series where we review active shooter incidents and the police response to them, finding out what, if anything, could have or should have been done differently to save more lives. Today we'll be reviewing the Covenant Presbyterian School shooting in Nashville, what led up to it, as well as critiquing the police response. If you're interested in this sort of thing, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and be sure to check out my previous videos. As always, let's begin with a brief background of our subject. Audrey Elizabeth Hale was born on March 24, 1995. Sometime in 2022, Hale would identify as transgender and change her name to Aiden Hale. Hale worked as a graphic designer and had no known criminal history or negative interactions with police at all. Hale apparently attended the school she would eventually attack when she was 10 years old. The Covenant Presbyterian School is a private school that enrolls approximately 200 students and was founded in 2001. There is, at this time anyway, little known about Hale's actions in the days prior to the shooting. We know that Hale planned the shooting extensively for months, based on writings found afterwards. Between October 20th, 2020 and June 6, 2022, Hale purchased 7 firearms, 3 of which would be used during the shooting. Hale lived with parents, who when interviewed afterwards claimed they had no knowledge of any weapons being in the home. Included in the aftermath of this tragedy were conversations about red flag laws, which Tennessee does not have. As we have discussed before, these laws allow people to petition the courts to have firearms removed from someone who is shown to be a threat to themselves or others for a period of time. In this case, these likely would not have worked, as Hale had no negative interactions with police as noted above, and I could find no reports of threats having been made. On top of that, red flag laws don't work well when no one knows the person in question has any firearms. March 27th, 2023. At approximately 9:53 a.m., Hale is seen via surveillance footage arriving in the school's parking lot in her gray Honda Fit. At 9:57 a.m., Hale sends a message on Instagram to an old classmate, Paige Patton, who she reportedly stayed in contact with. Hale tells Paige, "So basically that post I made on here about you, that was basically a suicide note. I'm planning to die today. This is not a joke. You'll probably hear about me on the news after I die. This is my last goodbye. I love you. See you in another life." After Paige tries to offer advice, Hale responds with, "I know, but I don't want to live. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to upset you or get attention. I just need to die. I wanted to tell you first because you are the most beautiful person I've ever seen and known all my life. My family doesn't know what I'm about to do. One day, this will make more sense. I've left more than enough evidence behind, but something bad is about to happen." Now, going off topic for a minute, you may be wondering why these people don't just off themselves, as so many of them claim to want to die and express a desire to not want to be here any longer. And yet, instead of just either seeking help or doing it, they instead choose to hurt everyone else around them, with the intent to die either by their hand or responding officers anyway. And this is not only seen with mass shooters. As shown here, what we refer to as murder-suicides are becoming very common today. It was something many people just didn't hear about years ago, and yet today is increasingly popular. And it's not just strangers and spouses that fall victim to this, as even young children lose their lives in this way, more and more every year. Sadly, there seems to be no end in sight. Alright, let's get back to our timeline. After receiving these alarming messages, Patty would contact a crisis hotline, who then called the police. It would be, unfortunately, too late. At approximately 10:11 a.m., Hale, who was armed with 2 rifles and a handgun, shot through a set of doors and entered the building. The call to police would come 2 minutes later, at 10:13 a.m., informing them of a shooter in the school.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
Covenant School.
Okay, we've got them out there. Where are you at in the building?
I'm upstairs in the 4th grade classroom on the sub. We
4th grade classroom?
Gunshots. Everyone okay, but we hear gunshots and someone...
Ma'am, listen to me. Listen. We have them out there. We have police out there. I need to know what room you're in.
Upstairs. They're going through and they're shooting everything. We need someone upstairs.
Okay, what room are you in, ma'am?
Hale is seen walking around the building and appears to be looking for victims. None of the footage released yet shows Hale shooting at anyone but officers, and very little has been released about the order in which the victims were killed. Hale's victims were 61-year-old Mike Hill, who leaves behind 7 children and 14 grandchildren. Mike was a janitor at the school and beloved by staff and students alike. 60-year-old Catherine Kuntz, the head of Covenant School. Catherine is credited with getting staff at the school trained for active shooter incidents, training them on how to best keep students safely bunkered down and assist responding officers with information and access to the school. 61-year-old Cynthia Peak, a substitute teacher at the school, also joins this tragic list. Cynthia is said to have been devout in her faith to Christ and dedicated her life to being an educator. Cynthia leaves behind her husband and 3 children. The next 3 on the list are students Hallie Scruggs, Evelyn Deckhouse, and William Kinney, all just 9 years old. Hallie and Evelyn were classmates together, and all 3 students had their entire lives ahead of them, before they were cut short by Hale. As Hale was on a rampage in the school, officers were getting closer to putting an end to her miserable life. At approximately 10:23 a.m., officers arrive at the school. So let's go over the police response and body cam footage. Officers Rex Engelbert and Michael Colazzo arrive on scene and meet with a teacher, who confirms that there is an active shooter in the building and that 2 students are missing. Both officers, accompanied by backup officers who are still arriving, begin to sweep the school, moving towards the sound of gunfire. This is textbook what we spoke about as being the golden standard for responding to active shooters. The officers step over a victim in the hallway, remembering their ultimate goal. Stop the shooting, stop the killing. That is priority number 1, and all officers on scene have it on their minds as they rush toward the sound of gunfire and the eventual confrontation with the killer. Detective Sergeant Jeff Maths, who was with them that day, talks about the toll such a duty took on him, stating, "All of us stepped over a victim. To this day, I do not know how I did that morally, but training is what kicked in. None of us can really understand how hard this would be unless we were there, but it must have taken tremendous mental fortitude to overcome your own instincts and mind that are screaming at you to stop and help the wounded lying all around you." Gunfire continues to ring out, and officers talk of smelling the gunpowder in the air as they get closer and closer to their target. Officers push past yet another victim as they draw closer to the source of the gunfire, which is almost continuous at this point, as Hale shoots down at officers' cars from the second-story windows. As they approach the end of the hallway, Officer Rex Engelbert begins a tactical maneuver known as slicing the pie, staying back from his source of cover and moving sideways bit by bit until the shooter comes into view. Officer Engelbert then fires several times at Hale, and Hale can be seen dropping to the ground. As officers approach, Hale continues to reach for her weapon and is shot several more times as officers encircle. Hale's miserable life and rampage have finally come to an end. In all honesty, there is no better video example of how we as police should be responding and trained to respond to these active shooter situations. This was by the book, with great communication by all officers, who moved without hesitation to the sound of gunfire to save as many lives as possible. Once the killer was put down, officers then began to work backwards, thinking of evacuating students and staff members and getting medical treatment for the injured. Due to the prompt response from these officers, only 6 lives were taken that day. Now that doesn't sound much like a victory, does it? But when compared to other mass shootings, such as Columbine or the Texas Tower shooting, which we recently covered, or Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, etc., it's obvious how many more lives could have been lost without the prompt response of officers. Let's talk about the officer response for a minute. You'll notice officers are now equipped with rifles, unlike in the Columbine shooting, or especially in the Charles Whitman shooting. Departments are also equipping officers with level 3 body armor designed to stop rifle rounds such as the commonly used .556 round. But more than this, officers are just being better trained, with greater emphasis being placed on responding to active shooter situations. As I've said before, police work is reactionary in nature. We respond to a need in our community, but we don't predict them. As the instances of mass shootings increase, so does our training and equipment. But obviously, they don't address the source of the shootings, and they often don't prevent them. So what can we do to stop things like this? Well, in this case, as we noted above, the shooter did not have a criminal history that would disqualify them from owning a weapon, such as a felony or domestic violence conviction. Also not reported were any instances of mental health issues that would likewise have prevented a weapons purchase. Red flag laws, as we talked about before, are less than helpful if no one suspects you of being unwell or even owning firearms. And what about the firearms? Were these excessively dangerous? Were they illegal? Hale used a Kel-Tec Sub 2000, a 9mm folding carbine, a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 9mm handgun, and a Lead Star grunt rifle, chambered either in .223 or .556. These are, for all intents and purposes, basic firearms. Nothing illegal to own or illegally modified at all. There just really wasn't much in the way of red flags or alarms being raised, and honestly, no major areas where Hale could have been stopped before this. So what were Hale's motivations for this? Well, as of now, Nashville police still have not released Hale's manifesto. Police claim that the investigation is still open, and that's why it hasn't been released. Another excuse they have given is that the city of Nashville believes they will be the subject of legal action, and as such have listened to their lawyers who advised them to not release it. Despite their best efforts, 3 pages were leaked and released to the public by online personality Steven Crowder. These 3 pages were confirmed by the Metro Nashville Police Chief to be authentic and accurate. Instead of transparency, the department claims they will use every resource to find the person who leaked the documents. From these 3 pages, we get a glimpse into what Hale's motivations were. The pages detail Hale's hatred towards the young children who go here, calling them crackers who have rich parents. Hale further claims to want to kill multiple students and hopes to have a high death count, calling the students homophobic slurs and expressing hatred towards them because of their white privilege. Allegedly, there is much more, with even well-drawn-out maps of the school and extensive details of Hale's plans. As of 8 days ago, the fight continues in court for the manifesto to be released. As with most tragedies, the real prevention starts at home, with parents or those closest to them who can either help the person themselves or get them the help they need. But when these people fall through the cracks of family and society, it boils over and becomes a problem for everyone else. Hale killed those she had never met or had any problems with, those who had never actually wronged her. Unfortunately, the answer to can these shootings be stopped is, as it always has been, not an easy one to answer. One thing we can say, it was reported that Hale had picked out another target before the Covenant School, but in writings had decided not to because of the level of security present. To me, that's the best answer we have. Schools should be outfitted with police or armed, well-trained guards. In this case, wherever Hale's first target was, they were spared from having to suffer the loss and terror Hale caused. But because of Hale, 3 children will never get a chance to grow up and experience the life that was robbed from them. Because of Hale, 6 grieving families have had something taken from them that they can never get back in this life. In every one of these tragedies, all we're left with is questions and loss, as we await for the next one to unfold. But that will do for this week's video, guys. I hope you found my retelling and take of the event informative. If you guys have any questions about something I didn't cover, go ahead and ask them in the comments. If you're interested in seeing more of this content, we'd love to have you around, so you can go ahead and subscribe. I'll have one next week for you guys that covers a pretty recent one, and I may actually have to make that one 2 parts. I hope to see you all then. And as always, stay tuned and stay safe.